Imagine waking up one morning to the alarming news that banks have suddenly closed their doors. You instinctively reach for your phone to check your balance, only to find that the banking app refuses to load. Nearby, a cash machine displays a sign reading, "Out of service." Although shops remain open, no one is willing to accept your debit card as payment. Gas stations are only taking cash, leaving you in a bind. When it comes time to pay your rent, your landlord informs you that they will not accept any electronic transfers. Initially, you dismiss this as a temporary glitch or a technical issue that will soon be resolved. However, as you step outside, the atmosphere around you reveals a much grimmer reality. Crowds of anxious people form long lines outside closed bank branches, their faces etched with worry. Supermarkets are packed with frantic shoppers pushing carts overflowing with goods, all paying with crumpled bills since cards are rendered useless. The television blares urgent news. The financial system is undergoing an emergency overhaul. Suddenly, it hits you like a cold wave. Your money isn't where you thought it was. It's not sitting in your account waiting for withdrawal. It has always just been numbers on a screen, and now that screen has gone dark. The underlying thread connecting these narratives is that banks do not safeguard your money in the manner you might assume. They operate on a fractional reserve system, meaning only a small portion of each deposited dollar remains on hand while the rest is lent out or invested. When too many people simultaneously demand cash from their accounts, the illusion of security collapses like a house of cards. Rather than acknowledging the fragility of financial institutions during crises, governments frequently side with the banks. They freeze withdrawals and devalue deposits while forcing ordinary citizens to shoulder the burden of systemic failures. Now imagine if such a scenario unfolded tomorrow right in your hometown. How would you respond? Would you have enough cash set aside for a week? Or even a month? Could you manage your mortgage payments if the troubles originated from within your own bank? What about feeding your family if all digital transactions were suddenly cut off? This isn't merely paranoia. It's about confronting an uncomfortable truth. Our financial systems are not designed for your protection, but rather for their own self-preservation. When stress levels rise within these systems, it becomes evident that banks are not secure vaults holding your wealth but rather fragile mechanisms relying on public trust. It's essential to recognize this reality and consider how vulnerable we truly are when faced with sudden economic upheaval. The stability we take for granted can vanish overnight, leaving individuals scrambling for solutions while authorities prioritize institutional interests over those of everyday people. As soon as that fragile confidence crumbles, the flow of money and power shifts towards avenues beyond your control. This is a nightmarish scenario, and history has shown us time and again, from Argentina to Cyprus, from Lebanon to the very heart of the United States, that this is not merely theoretical. It is a recurring theme in our economic narrative. When we delve deeper into these crises, the underlying patterns become painfully clear. Banks do not fail by mere accident. Their collapses are rooted in the very architecture of their operations. The system of fractional reserve banking, which forms the backbone of our financial infrastructure, embodies both brilliance and vulnerability. In essence, banks do not simply hold onto your deposits like coats hanging in a cloakroom, waiting for you to reclaim them. Instead, they actively utilize your funds to generate additional wealth. For instance, when you deposit $1,000, the bank may retain $50 as a reserve while lending out the remaining $950. Perhaps to businesses seeking growth, homebuyers wanting mortgages, or even to government entities. This loaning process creates a chain reaction. That initial credit can transform into new deposits for other individuals or businesses, potentially inflating from $1,000 into $5,000 or even $10,000 circulating through various loans. Such a mechanism fuels economic expansion but also resembles a precarious house of cards. If too many account holders decide to withdraw their initial deposits at once, the bank simply does not have enough cash on hand to accommodate them all. This is precisely why trust serves as the cornerstone of this entire system. It functions effectively as long as individuals believe in the stability of their financial institutions. However, once that trust begins to waver, panic ensues. Not everyone needs to withdraw simultaneously. It's sufficient for a critical mass of depositors to expose the thin layer of reserves held by banks. Panic spreads like wildfire, and even solvent banks can find themselves facing insolvency. The situation can be likened to a fire breaking out in a crowded theater. One scream ignites chaos and leads to a frenzied rush for exits where survival instinct takes over and transforms calmness into hysteria. Governments are acutely aware of this dynamic. Hence, from crisis to crisis, their instinctive response is often geared towards safeguarding banks rather than individual depositors. For instance, when Argentina implemented its Corralito, it was not driven by malice but by necessity. Allowing unrestricted withdrawals would have led to a complete collapse of banks within days. Similarly, during Cyprus's financial crisis when authorities executed a bail-in, seizing depositors' funds for recapitalization efforts was framed as an essential remedy for recovery. Yet the harsh reality was that ordinary citizens bore the brunt of decisions made by politicians, bankers, and international lenders. In 1933 in the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt did more than just reassure the public. He bought crucial time needed to halt an avalanche of bankruptcies that threatened to engulf the economy entirely. The stark truth remains: banks and governments are intricately intertwined in ways that affect every aspect of financial stability and public trust. This scenario may sound like the opening chapter of a dystopian novel, but it is far from fiction. Such events have transpired before, not in some distant land fraught with instability and chaos, but in countries that prided themselves on being modern, secure, and well-protected. When these situations arise, life does not slow down politely. Instead, it shatters into fragments. The rules governing wealth and survival shift dramatically in an instant. Governments play a crucial role in ensuring the stability and trustworthiness of banks, particularly during times of crisis. Conversely, banks are essential for governments as they provide a means to finance deficits, purchase bonds, and channel necessary loans into the economy. When financial turmoil strikes, these institutions often find themselves rallying together for support. However, the individual stakeholders, depositors, taxpayers, and those who believe they own their funds are frequently overlooked in this dynamic. The illusion of safety is reinforced through various regulations and insurance mechanisms. For instance, deposit insurance schemes appear to offer a safeguard for account holders. In the United States, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation guarantees accounts up to $250,000. Yet it is worth pondering: if every depositor simultaneously demanded their insured amounts, would sufficient funds be available? The answer is no. The insurance fund represents merely a fraction of total deposits. Its true strength lies in its psychological impact, a placebo designed to maintain public calm during turbulent times. What happens when financial institutions shut their doors? The ramifications are immediate and severe. Commerce grinds to a halt, digital transactions vanish, and employee salaries are delayed. Supply chains become disrupted, leading to widespread chaos. Take Lebanon as an example. Factories could not import raw materials due to restrictions on transferring dollars abroad. During Greece's financial crisis in 2015, individuals faced sweltering heat while queuing at ATMs for hours just to withdraw a paltry €60 per day. Weddings were postponed, medical procedures canceled, and children were pulled from schools, all because the financial system had deemed access to money a privilege rather than an inherent right. Even in this age dominated by smartphones, cryptocurrencies, and fintech solutions, such issues persist unabated. In fact, they may have worsened. The digitization of currency has rendered us more reliant on banks and centralized systems than ever before. A server crash or card reader malfunction can suddenly render one's wealth intangible, simply numbers lost within a web of uncertainty. In a cashless society, the concept of a bank closure transforms from an archaic fear reminiscent of the Great Depression into a very real modern nightmare that looms ominously on the horizon. Consider the far-reaching consequences. Businesses unable to pay their employees lead to widespread layoffs. Supermarkets struggle to compensate suppliers. As a result, shelves become barren and empty. Investors panic and hastily sell off assets at rock-bottom prices, jeopardizing retirement accounts and pension plans in the process. Governments scramble desperately to rebuild trust among citizens. However, each passing day brings longer queues at financial institutions and dwindling patience among the populace. What may have begun as a technical issue within corporate boardrooms evolves rapidly into a full-blown social crisis with dire implications for society at large. The delicate balance between banks' operations and governmental oversight remains fragile. As we navigate these complexities in our increasingly interconnected world, it becomes vital for both entities to prioritize transparency and accountability while fostering trust among individuals who rely on them for financial security. The stakes have never been higher. Our collective future hinges on how we address these challenges moving forward. As the days pass, despair grows among the populace. Barter systems emerge, people begin hoarding essentials, and even protests arise. This is not mere speculation. History has shown us similar patterns in various nations across the globe. It is entirely plausible that we could witness such turmoil once more. If you believe that this could never happen in countries like Canada, France, or Japan, reflect on the words spoken in Argentina during the year 2000, or in Greece a decade later, or even in Lebanon just a few years ago. The notion of stability is but a fleeting illusion until the moment it shatters. The uncomfortable truth remains. Banks do not exist to safeguard your wealth. Their primary function is to protect their own interests and the system they uphold. When crises arise, they will prioritize their survival over yours. This is how the system operates, and denying this reality can lead to catastrophic consequences. Imagine waking up one day to find your bank's website inaccessible, your debit card declined at checkout, and your paycheck indefinitely delayed. Now extend that scenario over a couple of days. What if this situation escalated into weeks? Would you have sufficient cash to cover groceries, rent, and other bills? Could your employer even manage to pay you if payroll systems were frozen? This is where fiction morphs into a chilling reality. Banks are far from being neutral vaults for your assets. Rather, they serve as critical arteries of the economy. Cut off these vital channels, and everything downstream begins to wither away. The lessons learned from past crises are not merely dusty tales from history. They are stark warnings for our present and future. When Argentina shuttered its banks in 2001, the outrage that erupted on the streets was fueled by more than just financial loss. It stemmed from a deep sense of betrayal. Ordinary citizens felt trapped by a system that had proven untrustworthy. Take Argentina as an example in the year 2001. After years of economic mismanagement, mounting debt, and reliance on International Monetary Fund bailouts, the government found itself in dire straits. As citizens rushed to convert their pesos into dollars and withdraw funds from banks, those institutions began to hemorrhage deposits at an alarming rate. In response to this panic, the government implemented drastic measures by shutting down access to bank accounts altogether. They termed this action Corralito, meaning little corral. However, for ordinary Argentinians, it felt more like being trapped in a cage. In Cyprus during 2013, middle-class savers watched helplessly as years of diligent work aimed at securing institutions deemed too big to fail evaporated overnight. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the economic collapse obliterated any semblance of citizenship as individuals realized their leaders had gambled away their futures. In the United States, the scars left by the Great Depression shaped an entire generation's approach to saving, instilling lifelong habits rooted in caution. These narratives share an unsettling truth. Your money belongs solely to you until the system decides otherwise. A balance displayed in a banking app may seem reassuring, until it isn't anymore. This is why today's lesson carries such weight. Understanding the fragile nature of financial systems can empower individuals to make informed decisions regarding their resources and security. As we navigate our lives amidst these uncertainties, it becomes crucial to remain vigilant and proactive about our financial well-being. Diversifying assets and exploring alternative means of securing wealth might not only serve as safety nets but also ensure resilience against unforeseen challenges that may arise within traditional banking frameworks. Awareness and preparedness can spell the difference between panic and peace when faced with potential crises, a lesson many have learned too late throughout history's tumultuous chapters. In a world characterized by unprecedented levels of national debt, fragile global supply chains, and escalating geopolitical tensions, the concept of banking holidays or capital controls no longer seems far-fetched. These tools are now part of the governmental toolkit. So how should individuals respond in such uncertain times? The answer certainly does not lie in a hasty withdrawal of funds from bank accounts or stashing cash away under mattresses. Historical evidence suggests that reactive fear only intensifies vulnerability. The key to navigating these turbulent waters is resilience. Diversification is more than just a trendy catchphrase. It represents a crucial survival strategy. Holding assets across various formats, institutions, and even countries can spell the difference between paralysis and agility in times of crisis. True wealth encompasses not only what you earn but also what you can access during challenging periods. Gold, real estate, alternative savings methods, and even cash reserves are not outdated concepts. They serve as lifelines when stability falters. Moreover, individual financial strategies must be complemented by an understanding of collective dynamics. It is vital to comprehend the legislative processes that shape our financial environment. Governments frequently introduce measures that ostensibly aim to protect citizens but often prioritize safeguarding the established system instead. Deposit insurance, emergency powers, and capital movement controls function primarily as mechanisms for managing panic rather than genuinely preventing systemic collapse. Failing to recognize this reality can lead to complacency among the populace. A clear comprehension empowers us to advocate for better regulations, enhanced transparency, and accountability in systems that have repeatedly shown their potential for failure. One of the most disconcerting aspects of this narrative is the fragility of trust. Banks do not need to collapse physically. They merely require a loss of faith from the public. Once confidence erodes, the countdown begins toward inevitable fallout. When closures are announced, the facade drops. Banks have never been neutral entities. They are powerful institutions intricately connected with governments, corporations, and global markets. You are not merely a customer. You are an integral part of a system that functions until it doesn't. While history does not repeat itself verbatim, its echoes resonate loudly through time. The lessons learned from Argentina, Cyprus, Lebanon, Greece, and even the United States are straightforward. Do not conflate access with ownership. If your wealth is solely dependent on institutional power structures, then it truly does not belong to you. Withdrawals were limited to just 250 pesos per week, a mere pittance for many trying to navigate everyday expenses. Accounts holding dollars were forcibly converted into devalued pesos at rates that left savings drastically diminished almost overnight. Within weeks, hard-earned money set aside for housing, business ventures, or retirement lost half of its actual value due to this economic upheaval. Protesters took to the streets armed with pots and pans, banging them together in frustration and anger as middle-class families who had once felt secure found themselves plunged into chaos and uncertainty. To attain genuine financial freedom, it is essential to transcend the illusion of security and prepare for moments when systemic failures occur. Cultivating awareness and proactive measures can help shield against unforeseen disruptions, while ensuring that you maintain control over your assets amid uncertainty. One day, the question might not be, what if banks close tomorrow? But rather, what should I do now that they are already closed? This shift in perspective can be eye-opening and may prompt you to consider alternative solutions. History holds valuable lessons. Let me guide you on where to find them. This stark reality illustrates what occurs when banks suddenly close. Money evaporates not in some abstract sense but in tangible ways, suddenly making bread, milk, and rent unattainable luxuries overnight. And Argentina is by no means alone in this struggle. In Cyprus during 2013, under pressure from the European Union as part of a financial assistance agreement, the government was compelled to freeze bank deposits, an action that sent shockwaves through society. In both cases, the chaos of Argentina and the abrupt freezes of Cyprus, the lives of ordinary citizens were irrevocably altered as financial systems collapsed under pressure. What should have been secure foundations turned out to be fragile constructs easily shattered by unforeseen circumstances beyond anyone's control. Ordinary depositors woke up one day to a shocking reality. Accounts holding more than 100,000 euros were subject to searches, effectively being confiscated in an attempt to rescue failing banks. The most severe impact was not felt by billionaires. It was the small businesses that suddenly found themselves unable to pay their employees, retirees who struggled to access their hard-earned pensions, and parents left helpless when it came time to cover their children's education expenses. In Lebanon, a devastating mix of corruption and financial collapse in 2019 led to the implementation of strict capital controls. Banks placed severe limits on withdrawals, allowing individuals to take out only a few $100s each month, regardless of the balance in their accounts. This frustration boiled over as desperate depositors stormed bank branches, armed and ready for confrontation. The common theme in each of these situations was painfully clear. What you believed to be your money was actually under the bank's control. Even in the United States, a nation often perceived as immune to such crises, banks have faced closures. During the depths of the Great Depression in 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt declared nationwide banking holidays. For 4 long days, every bank across the country ceased operations. Citizens found themselves unable to withdraw cash. Businesses struggled to meet payroll obligations, and an atmosphere of uncertainty permeated society. It wasn't until the government conducted thorough assessments and selectively reopened banks that public trust began to gradually recover. Consider this: even one of the wealthiest nations had no choice but to freeze its entire banking system in order to avert disaster.